It was the last field trip of the school year, and the students of Ridgeway High were buzzing with excitement. The buses were packed, teachers were yelling to keep everyone seated, and the smell of sandwiches and sunscreen filled the air. Destination: Black Hollow Nature Reserve, a sprawling, forested expanse known for its rugged trails, ancient trees and eerie legends. Most students were thrilled about the escape from routine, but not Anna. She sat quietly by the window, staring at the dense trees in the distance. Something about Black Hollow unnerved her. The bus rattled to a stop at the edge of the reserve. The dense woods loomed overhead, their canopies blotting out the sky. "Stick to the trails," Mrs. Carter, the science teacher, barked. "And for heaven's sake, stay in groups." Anna trailed behind her classmates as they filed off the bus, the gravel crunching beneath their feet. She felt watched, though every time she turned around she saw nothing but the endless rows of trees. "Come on, Anna," her best friend Lily called, grabbing her hand. "You've been moping all day. This is going to be fun." Anna forced a smile. "Yeah, I guess." But deep down she couldn't shake the unease settling in her chest. The first part of the day was uneventful. They toured the visitor center, where a guide droned on about the local wildlife. They ate lunch at picnic tables surrounded by towering pines, the occasional squirrel darting by. It wasn't until after lunch that things got strange. Mrs. Carter led them on a trail deeper into the forest, pointing out flora and fauna as they went. The sunlight dimmed under the thick canopy and the air grew colder. The students whispered among themselves about ghost stories they'd heard, about how campers sometimes disappeared in these woods, leaving behind only whispers of laughter on the wind. Anna tried to stay close to Lily, but the crowd grew chaotic as kids darted off to explore. "Stay on the trail," Mrs. Carter shouted, her voice tinged with frustration. Then somewhere ahead, a shrill scream pierced the air. The group froze. "What was that?" Lily whispered, clutching Anna's arm. "Probably just someone trying to scare us," a boy named Jake muttered, rolling his eyes. But when the scream came again, sharper and closer, the laughter and whispers stopped. "Everyone stay together," Mrs. Carter ordered, her voice quavering. She marched forward, herding the students like sheep. As they rounded the bend, they saw a backpack lying in the middle of the trail, its contents spilled, papers, snacks, a phone. "It's Mark's," someone said. "Where is he?" Mrs. Carter picked up the bag, her face pale. "Stay here," she said. "Don't move." She handed her whistle to one of the older students and vanished down a side trail. The minutes dragged on. The group grew restless. "Maybe he's just playing a prank," Jake said, trying to sound confident but failing. "I don't think so," Anna whispered. She stared into the woods, the shadows between the trees shifting like restless figures. A rustling came from the bushes ahead. Everyone froze, expecting Mrs. Carter. But what emerged wasn't their teacher. It was Mark, or what was left of him. His skin was pale, his eyes glazed over as if he were in a trance. His clothes were torn and dirty, and his mouth hung slightly open. "Mark?" Lily cried, rushing toward him. But Anna grabbed her arm. "Don't." Mark moved jerkily, like a puppet on invisible strings. He stepped onto the trail, his head cocked at an unnatural angle. The group stared, paralyzed by fear. Then he spoke, or at least something spoke through him. "You're all here to play," he said, his voice an unnatural, echoing monotone. "Don't stray. The forest doesn't like when you stray." The students screamed and backed away, but Mark took another step forward, his movements inhumanly stiff. "What's wrong with him?" someone whispered. "We have to go," Anna said, pulling Lily toward the trailhead. The others hesitated, torn between fleeing and waiting for Mrs. Carter. But when Mark, or whatever controlled him, grinned, revealing teeth far sharper than his own, the decision was made. They ran. Branches slapped at their faces, and roots threatened to trip them as they barreled down the path. Anna's heart pounded in her chest. Behind them, the sound of heavy, irregular footsteps echoed in pursuit. They stumbled into the visitor center, breathless and panicked. But something was wrong. The ranger who had greeted them earlier was gone. The building was eerily silent, the air thick with the smell of pine and rot. "Where is everyone?" Lily whispered, clutching Anna's hand. "We need to call for help," Anna said, pulling out her phone. But the screen was filled with static, the time blinking midnight over and over. Before they could process what was happening, the lights flickered. A deep voice rumbled through the air, vibrating the walls. "You left the path," it said, each word dripping with malice. The door slammed shut. The windows darkened, as though night had fallen in an instant. One by one, the students were swallowed by shadow, their screams cutting off abruptly. Anna clung to Lily, tears streaming down her face. "I don't want to die here," Lily whispered. "We won't," Anna said, though she didn't believe it. In the end, only Anna and Lily remained, huddled in a corner. The shadows crept closer, their movements deliberate, predatory. A voice, Mark's voice, whispered in Anna's ear. "The forest always takes its share." The shadows lunged and the world went black. Days later, the buses were found parked neatly at the trailhead. The teachers and students of Ridgeway High had vanished without a trace. Search parties scoured Black Hollow, finding only scraps of belongings scattered along the trails. Among them was Anna's notebook, open to a single page. "Stay on the path. It's the only rule." We didn't listen. No one dared to enter the forest after that. The trails were closed, the gates locked. But on cold, quiet nights, locals swear they can still hear the laughter of children carried on the wind, mingled with screams.